I really like taking suggestions from people in the comments for what videos to make on here. Sometimes people will suggest something that I've already thought of myself, or I just look at and instantly go, oh yeah, people are gonna love this, I gotta take a crack at this. And then other times people will suggest things that are a bit out of my wheelhouse that maybe I wouldn't have thought of, and I'm like, okay, maybe we'll go around to that. And then some people are so determined that if I don't do a video, they'll comment it for months and months and months on end, and as long as they're nice about it, they may eventually wear me down to a point where I go, alright, this is a bit out of my wheelhouse, but I think it's worth taking a shot at. So, Fruit Punch, you beautiful sentient beverage, you have finally worn me down, and I think it's about time to take a crack at Plants vs. Zombies, Dungeons & Dragons. Your determination has paid off. Let's go. Hit like, if you want. Subscribe, if you feel like. But either way, enjoy the show. There was once a village in the depths of the Naborian swamp. It thrived and the people were happy. Until the day a necromancer came through searching for a new land to make his domain. The sinister practitioner of the dark arts, Zombos, saw the swamplands and deemed them the perfect place for him to enact his foul deeds. And so he arose an army of the dead to chase out the people of the land. Some fought back at first, but slowly, near all the land's residents deemed it was a losing battle, and they fled. All save for one soul, who is now considered brave, but then was called a fool, a nut, crazy even. This man was Krzysztof Davidsworth. Admittedly, he wasn't the most sound-minded being in the lands, but he was determined and willing to fight for his home. On top of this, he had the necessary skills to do so. See, Davidsworth was a powerful seed master and beast master, completely in tune with the creatures and foliage of his home swamp. So when the zombies came for his home, he was constantly able to summon plants and creatures of the earth to protect him. One of his regular summons was a Man-trap Chomper. This species is a 10-foot tall ravenous plant that can devour a full zombie in a single bite, returning it to its place underground. It can't move far or quickly on its own, so he must be very careful about where he summons one, but once in place, the only way a zombie is getting past this kind of creature is if the Chomper is already in the process of chewing a previous victim. These beasts are incredibly useful in his efforts, but they are far from the strongest monsters in his camp. We shall see more very soon. Now, my main concern about making this video was that I was just gonna make a whole bunch of slightly different shambling mounds. I've talked before about shambling mounds in D&D, they're probably my second favorite creature after Tarrasques, and since these are all plant monsters, I was like, am I just gonna end up doing a bunch of those? But I asked Fruit Punch for a bunch of suggestions, some of which I took, so thank you very much for those, Fruit Punch. But I really did a more diverse roster of creatures than I thought I would. Like, I'm really glad I did a shambling mound for this creature, because I think it worked really well, and I had obviously adapted elements from the Plants vs. Zombies Chomper in a fun sort of way that changed it up from other shambling mounds I've drawn on the channel. And I guess, really, this is more of a man-trap, which I wasn't familiar with as a creature in D&D until I did this episode and was doing a bit of research for it. I actually lost where this train of thought was going, but yeah, like how this turned out, and I'm glad I diversify the kinds of creatures I use going forward after this. I think the next one's really cool in particular, so let's take a look at the finished version of this one. Now, the Necromancer Zombos eventually started to get wise to the fact that Davidsworth used the energy of the sun for much of his summoning spells. Therefore, he thought he'd found a simple solution to rid himself of the final holdout in the swamplands: attack at night. Little did he know Davidsworth was fully prepared for such an attack. You see, he has other ways of getting sun energy even at night that we'll look more into later, but on top of that, he has a myriad of creatures at his disposal that are far easier to summon when the sun is down. One of these is the Cryoshrulim. This is a type of ice golem that spends much of its time sleeping. While doing so, it sits its lower half dug into the ground, so it almost appears like a massive frozen mushroom. But don't let that sway you into thinking it's a wholly docile creature. When these things are called upon and awakened, they can blast forth a shockwave of ice so powerful they can freeze every zombie in the area completely solid. Of course, once they emit one of these blasts, they'll often then sleep for another while, but usually they've done enough damage to the oncoming foes that the following events render the enemy waves deceased. Or, I guess, re-deceased. Davidsworth's other forces can handle things much easier when their foes are popsicles. Sometimes the invaders will thaw out and continue their assault, but in many cases, once frozen, Davidsworth's other forces will wipe them out before they can take another undead step. Now this one I was really flying with this one. I loved how it turned out. I love rendering icy kinds of things, doing the bluer kind of inks to the creature and making it really shiny and glinty. It's just, and then having the swampland in around it with the ice kind of flying up, and just a big pop of yellow in behind him ends up making him stand out really nicely, especially given his pose. I feel like I was flying with this one. I loved how it turned out. I think it was actually Fruit Punch's idea to do some golem kind of creatures, so thank you very much for the idea, Fruit Punch, because it worked out so nicely for this creature. I love this one. I guess I was also in a really good mental headspace as I did this one. I was listening to interviews from a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza, someone who my mom recommended some of his books a little while ago to me. If you want to learn how to control your emotional states and focus your mind better, I highly recommend his stuff. It doesn't really have much to do with the kind of stuff I make on this channel, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, so much good writings. But anyway, that's off topic. All in, I just really loved how this one turned out. I almost wish I'd formatted it differently so I could make it a poster. I definitely can't the way I've drawn it here, but you know what? It'll just stand on its own in this video and probably on my Instagram. So let's take a look at the finished result. Here it is. Now, as said prior, Davidsworth has other ways than the sun to gain enough energy for his spells. See, there's a specific type of creature he regularly summons to grant him energy, meaning he can essentially sustain his power for as long as he needs. The sunflower leshies of the swamp are beings that can spawn sun power from within themselves to grant to a summoner. As soon as Davidsworth gets any signs of an impending zombie attack, the first thing he'll do is call upon a group of these creatures to help him begin charging up his might. They're surprisingly fun-loving creatures, even in dire circumstances. In the midst of a brawl between beasts and the undead, the sunflower beings will often be dancing through the air, seemingly to the beat of the battle taking place. These creatures never do any damage themselves. In fact, if a zombie gets to them, there's little they can do to protect themselves. But because of the massive aid they've been to Davidsworth, he always ensures to summon creatures to protect them, while they continue to give him strength that he needs to summon more creatures. Even with their smaller stature and lack of combat potential, these creatures are easily the most essential in Davidsworth's ongoing battle against the foul necromancer. Now this one, I do also like how this drawing turned out, but it's a little bit more of a mixed bag in terms of quality, I'd say. The creature itself, I like. I think the design is simple, it works pretty well, it gets across what I was trying to do. I like that I play around a little bit with some cast shadow stuff that I don't normally do. The environment is a little bit less interesting, I'd say, and it kinda looks like this one's not really in a swamp, it looks like it's near the ocean or something like that. But the main thing that I'm not a huge fan of is how I did the glowy light things that she's spawning. I tried taking some inspiration from what the actual sun ball things look like when you're playing Plants vs. Zombies, and I couldn't really think of what I usually do when I'm trying to draw a glowy ball of energy. These things look too much like a solid clump of yellow and orange. I messed around with it for a bit, but I ended up just having to move on. Overall, still lots of things I like about this piece, but I definitely wouldn't call it my favorite of the episode, because that was definitely the Ice Golem. But anyway, I hope you all still like it anyway. Let's take a look at the finished result, shall we? Now, we've yet to discuss Davidsworth's main weapon in these battles. Well, the Chompers devour those who get too close. They can only do so much damage, as they must chew on one prey before moving on to the next. When the zombies are sent in massive waves of shambling minions, Davidsworth is constantly in need of creatures that can fire at foes from afar. He has a myriad of these creatures he can call upon to do so, but one of the most powerful is a beast he calls up from the pools of the swamps. The Spew-P Hydra. This is a three-headed dragon-like creature with a trio of vicious maws, along with the innate ability to shoot blasts of green condensed mucus that somewhat resembles a massive green pea. hence its name. Now, they don't have the greatest aim of the creatures in Davidsworth's arsenal. The center head is often a straight shooter, but the other two tend to shoot off in all different directions without much evidence of having a specific target at all. Luckily, they never point themselves towards Davidsworth's home though, so the worst thing that can happen is they simply hit nothing, while the middle head does much of the target work. In best cases though, when larger swarms are inbound, these flailing firing heads can blast through a myriad of targets, while other beasts and plants take care of the more precision work. The fight between the dark necromancer Zombos and Krzysztof Davidsworth has long raged now, but hope continues to build. Some have seen Davidsworth's efforts and realized that he may actually have a chance of fending off his foe permanently. Soon, many will take up arms with him, and hopefully, with a more vast army, the determined summoner will fully secure his homeland once and for all. Now, this one I was obviously excited to do because it's kind of a dragon, it's a Hydra kind of creature, and I really like how this one turned out from a rendering standpoint and stuff like that. The only thing I don't love about it is the composition. And that just comes down to I didn't spend enough time trying out some different poses for the 3 different heads off the start. Admittedly, when I got into this one, I was trying to move a little bit faster because I knew a creature with 3 heads sometimes takes a bit longer to draw. And this one did take longer than the other drawings, but not too long overall. I mean, I guess it helps that a bunch of his body is underwater because he's coming up from a pool that doesn't look like a pool that's big enough for him to hide in now that I'm looking at it, but whatever, that's kind of a tangent. It is kind of hard to pose an image where a creature has 3 heads and try to figure out which one you want to be the focal point. It's, it's fine that there isn't one specific one that you're drawn to. I guess the one at the very top in the middle is above the others and has a little bit of a screamy thing, but personally I'm looking mostly at the one on the left, but overall, it doesn't feel like the piece has a specific head that I was trying to draw people's eyes towards. Which again, isn't a big deal, but I think it just could have been a better, more interesting piece if I had thought out that pose a little bit better right off the start. But as I said, besides that, I pretty much succeeded at doing with this one what I wanted. I don't think the color contrast is as nice as the second drawing in this episode, but as I've said, I really like that second drawing, so it's hard to compete with that one. Anyway, hope you all like the art. Let's take a look at the finished result of this last piece. Here it is. Well, there we have it. It's finally happened, Fruit Punch. Plants vs. Zombies, Dungeons and Dragons. I hope you liked it, I know I liked it, and I hope, everyone else who watched liked it. I wouldn't have made it if I didn't think there was a good chance that lots of people would be interested in this video. I definitely think it was a fun concept. Anyway, if you like Dungeons and Dragons stuff, I don't do it as much lately. Maybe I should start doing it more, but I have done a bunch of it in the past. I've got a bunch of Overwatch Dungeons and Dragons episodes. I've made Ben 10 aliens into D&D monsters. I've done Smash Bros. D&D. There's a whole playlist of them. I'll put it at the end of the video. But that's all for now. I hope you all enjoyed being very briefly back at regular PopCross Studios. I'm actually just back at my apartment for a few days to pack up some stuff like my bigger computer and tablet to bring back to my parents' place where I've been working for the last month and a bit. It's just really nice being up there. It's a bigger space, more open. Being around family is really nice. And my mom has a massive library of books that I'm just constantly going through when I'm not reading Wings of Fire. Which, by the way, next week. No, the week after? Soon. Wings of Fire soon. But anyway, besides that, everybody, that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson. This has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.